we might have a problem on our hands. PXN just made the entry-level barrier to sim racing insanely low, and I think we're about to see an epidemic. Everyone you're racing against is probably going to be using a PNX steering wheel, but not just any wheel. The PXN V9 Gen 2. This is the most budget-friendly bundle out there. When I say budget, I mean it. For $160, you get the PXN V9 Gen 2 racing wheel, which sadly doesn't feature force feedback, a 6-speed manual shifter, a set of pedals with a clutch. The pedals also use Holo effect sensors, which should help them last longer. Before we get into the review, let's talk about setting it up. First, you need either a desk or some sort of rig to mount the steering wheel on. In my case, I'm using a $50 rig from Amazon. On the bottom of the steering wheel base, there are suction cups and a clamp area. The clamps are included with the bundle. After securing the wheel, screw in the shifter and place the pedals where you want them. Now let's connect everything. On the back of the wheelbase, there are 5 ports, each one labeled. Plug the pedals and shifter into the respective ports. On the right hand side, there is a port for your extra power, and on the far left, there is a controller port. You'll need this if you're using the wheel on your console. The port next to it is for connecting to your console or PC. If you're on console, make sure you plug the controller in before connecting the base. If you've done this correctly, the green light at the bottom center of the wheel will turn on, indicating a successful connection. I'm going to be using this on an Xbox Series X. If you're setting this up on PC, it's even easier. Just make sure the pedals and shifter are connected to the base, then plug the base into your PC. And you're good to go. Now that we're all set up, let's talk about the shifter. This is the PXN generic shifter, the same one as they included on the original V9. It does the job and it feels decent for being a 6-speed manual, but the plastic base feels cheap and the overall build quality is just okay. I did like the high and low gear selector, which works very well for truck sims. However, I didn't know why they just didn't give us a 6-speed gated manual like the one they included on the V99. The two look nearly identical except for the top pieces. They are slightly different, which, one's a gated and one's a generic shifter. At the end of the day, though, it works and does get the job done. As for the pedals, I was honestly more disappointed with them than the shifter. There's absolutely no customization, so you're stuck with pretty much the default position. The pedals themselves feel okay, they have a bit of a springy return, but there's no real force behind them. It's way too easy to push them all the way down, which led to overbraking a lot while I was playing. They remind me a lot of an arcade style pedals, but on the bright side, they do include a clutch, which most pedals at this price point don't. You can also fold them up or extend them for a better footrest. However, there's no way to mount them to the rig, so you're just gonna have to hope they stay in place. Now, let's talk about the steering wheel. The wheel follows a truck style design, which isn't bad by any means, but it has no force feedback. Instead, they use rubber bands and springs for tension. To go along with that, PXN added dual vibration motors on each side to give you some sort of feedback. This helps a bit, but it's not the same as having real force feedback. A lot of times, I rely on the feeling when your tires start losing grip or when I'm taking a turn too sharp. But without that sense of feedback, I ended up oversteering and crashing a lot. That being said, the button layout is nice and I prefer it over the PXN V99 because it uses a standard Xbox layout in its normal configuration. Since this also works with PlayStation, PXN included PlayStation buttons as well. The buttons themselves feel pretty generic, like what you would find on a cheap controller, and the D-pad has no real feedback. It kind of just feels like you're dipping your hands in some mashed potatoes. The front bottom of the steering wheel, there's a rotation angle selector that lets you switch between 900 and 270. I left it at 900, which feels the best to me, but it's nice to have the option. The paddles on the backside of the steering wheel work well, and they only felt unresponsive a few times, but it was pretty rare. Both the paddles and the steering wheel will flex a bit, but honestly, while using it, you don't notice it too much. Actually, I really didn't notice it at all. It wasn't until afterwards I was kind of bending the wheel and the pedals start bending pretty good. I was like, oh, okay. But, It is what it is. Another thing they included is an LED throttle and brake indicator on the sides of the wheel. They are cool, but they don't really serve a purpose. I don't know why they spent the money and added it in. It's cool. They could have just added a shifter indicator or something, but I guess it is what it is. Also worth mentioning is the PXN App, which lets you fine-tune nearly every aspect of the steering wheel. You can adjust your sensitivity, tweak the vibration motors, and change the rotation angle, all in the app, and customize even your button layout to help enhance your gaming experience. Additionally, this device, well, the wheel itself works on every console out there. Pretty much everything except the Xbox 360, the PS3, and I believe the PS5, which is a little weird, but that's beside the point. Overall, I enjoyed using the wheel across several games. Despite its flaws, it works pretty well. However, I did run into a few frustrating issues. The first one was the device randomly not detecting my controller. After unplugging and reconnecting it, it worked, but then the shifter or pedals would stop responding. Plugging in additional power helped, but the issue kept coming back. Eventually, I found out unplugging the shifter completely solved this issue. After that, I was able to play 5+ hours without any sort of interruptions. Aside from me accidentally knocking over the pedals since you can't bolt them down. The second issue is the steering wheel randomly jerking all the way to the left or right and losing calibration. This only happened twice in about 20 sessions, but it's still something you should be aware of. So what's my verdict? Honestly, this bundle is worth it for the price. For $160, you get a steering wheel, a shifter, and a set of pedals with a clutch. Yes, it lacks force feedback, but at least PXN tried to compensate with vibration motors, something that no other wheel at this price point offers. That said, I should mention a few of my friends already own this wheel and haven't experienced any of the issues I had, so I might have just got a faulty unit. When everything worked properly, the steering was responsive and the pedals felt fine, and the shifter did its job. If you're looking for an entry-level setup for racing or truck sims, this is a great option. Or if you're a parent looking for a budget-friendly racing wheel for your kids, this is definitely worth considering. Just beware of the potential issues and you should be good to go. I enjoyed every moment of using this, and honestly, sometimes I liked it a little bit more than not having force feedback. That's just a hot take, alright? Well, games like Forza, I like Forza Motorsport. Damn, you gotta have that feedback, baby. There's nothing else in the world to having real force feedback. But I'll leave it there. Make a decision if you want something like this or not. It's up to you.